Hello everyone and welcome back to the Lampy Video channel, and I'm here joined by...
Lampy himself. We played a tournament again, let's go. Finally was time. 508 player regional in Montabaur, and I decided it's finally time to play again. And through the week, because I basically only had a week of playtesting, I started off with the idea of playing Go First Tenpai with the Fiend Smith cards and the Bystial cards, because I thought Rebellion looked crazy. The whole idea of the deck was really appealing to me. But the more I tested it, it didn't really feel that great anymore. So I thought, hey, if everyone right now is trying to play that grindy game, that long-term game, how about just going in again and play like a really fast deck again? Just play Go Second Tenpai with a lot of breakers. So I just wanted to outpace the format kind of be quicker than all the Fiendsmith decks in the format right now. And therefore I decided to play a pretty unique, I would say, list. And I played Go Second Fiendsmith Tenpai, 42 cards, and I ended up going 7-2, which is a pretty good record, I would say. I got like 28 out of over 500 players, which is definitely not bad. If it would be about Worlds points, I got like around 30 Worlds points, which is definitely not bad. And I got my qualification for Euros. Let's see whether I will use it or not. But I really like the idea. It was really fun, and I will give you more insight on it while we go through the list. So let's get into it. Let's get down here and let's get the cards going. Of course, we played triple Pydra. I was considering actually to cut this down to 2, but you just don't have enough engine cards anymore, so it was not really possible to cut this down any further because you just need one Tenpai card at least. I did play games where I didn't see any of the Tenpai cards, and I did win them actually, but you just play pure Fiendsmith at this point, and you do want those cards at some point. And then double Genroku. Post-siding, you do side out one of these going second usually, and you will be going second most of the time. So post-siding, just make room for other cards. Usually a side out, but definitely still worth running. And then I got flamed for this a lot by the other people in the venue, by my friends. And I did decide to run double Fadra. And I think there is some merit to just cutting the one from the main deck. And like also, of course, not sided, but there was a theory behind it. I wanted to have the push when I'm not successfully actually able to end the game on the second turn. I wanted, because Tenpai now with all the hits is a little bit of a glass cannon deck. You go through your Chandra, you go through your Fadra in the attempt to win the game on the first turn, and then you're left with really nothing but your Fiendsmith cards. And when your opponent is also running Fiendsmith cards, the grind game is not going to be the easiest. But when you then on the follow-up have the chance to go Genroku into Fadra or just simply Fadra again, then it looks a lot better because you get Chandra again, you get a lot more monsters and a lot more options, and therefore running two Fadras definitely wasn't the worst. It actually even came up against Josh in the last round of the tournament where the second Fadra did win me the game, but of course, second game, third game, you will be siding this card out a lot for sure.
Did you consider playing like Dora Draco or Masked Dragon even?
I was on the Masked Dragon technology at the very beginning. Wasn't really able to stick with that one. Dora I think could be alright. But it doesn't serve the same purpose, because if you have Dora on turn number 4, it's not going to give you the option to get back into Chandra again, you know? Because Chandra is in the graveyard after the second turn, and therefore you need the ability to reborn with Fadra. And therefore I think just Fadra in the long game is better than Dora. Of course, arguably Dora is a better starter, but that wasn't really why I played with second Fadra. It was more for longer games, and therefore I was satisfied with running Fadra as one of the more engine cards. And then of course, the one of Chandra, I did draw it a couple of times. It was amazing, not gonna lie. Still just the powerhouse of deck. And now the other cards, we do get into the Fiendsmith cards. I did play matches where actually I didn't reveal that I was on Tenpai until game number 3, and the opponents were like, huh? I thought you were just playing Fiendsmith Rising or something, because I literally only saw the Fiendsmith cards. And I usually was playing 3 Engravers in the going first version, but in going second, I wasn't really able to fit in that many Fiendsmith cards anymore. So we cut down to 2 Fiendsmith, arguably still the strongest engine in the game right now. And therefore, I felt very confident in including it, because even if my attempt of breaking the field, of ending the game on the second turn was unsuccessful, this was there to grind. And even more importantly, usually you would always start off with your Fiendsmith cards. You would start off Discard Engraver, or you would start off maybe with Activate Tract or something, Normal Summon Lurry, whatever you have from the Fiendsmith engine. and the opponent would be forced to interact with it. So they would be ashing Requiem, they would be using Veilers on Engravers sometimes because they just wanted to keep their monsters on the field. And therefore, this was always just there to bait out cards from the opponent. You literally baited so well with the Fiendsmith engine, and then you got into your Tenpai engine, and it was ending the game on the regular. So the Fiendsmith engine really worked fantastically as a bait, and I was really happy with those cards. Of course, rounding it off with also the Lacrima. You don't need more than one in that kind of a deck. And then you also play the one of Lurry, because it is, of course, belonging to the engine. And then that's a bit of an arguable card, I would say, because of course you're playing a go second deck, blind second deck, and you have a trap card in your main deck. This card went nuts though, because of course there is like going to be sometimes that players are going to send you first because they have seen you throughout the tournament using all those breakers and they know you're gonna go second deck. I gotta admit, I told too many people about my strategy for the tournament, so like every second person I met walking through the venue was like, oh, you're playing that go second Tenpai deck today, and I was like, who knows? But yeah, like it was not really a secret anymore, but still, I think until the last round of Swiss, until Josh actually, no one actually sent me first. I got to go second the entire time, which was my game plan, which worked out so nicely. And then I did definitely have the chance to use Fiend Smith and Paradise in some more grindy games as well, because let's face it, you don't get to game them, but it's really easy for this deck to break through an ordinary Fiendsmith Ryziel deck. It's really easy. You have so many of the breakers that work so well against that deck, and when you then just set up seals and set up, even like sometimes you get to set up Lacrima or something like this, like no, not Lacrima, Desiree or something like that as well. It's going to be really hard to break through again then, and when you then have follow up with like Fadra or something, you're gonna go in again. So yeah, I really like that. Then I did run triple Fuva loss. Amazing card overall. I am not running a whole lot of hand interaction, but I did not want to miss out on Fuvalos. I think Fuvalos is just really, between Fuvalos and Perulia, the better card against Malice and Ryziel combined. Of course, you could argue that Perulia itself is better against Ryziel, but when you're expecting both decks to be the factor of the format, I think just running Fuvalos at the moment is better, and therefore I included Fuvalos into the main deck, and you will see Perulia on the side deck later on, because I did not want to miss out on that card either. And then, in the beginning, I was toying around with running a big Bystial package with Lubellions and everything, but in the go second approach of the deck, there's just no real way to do that anymore. And the idea behind this was, I do not want to play the Bystial game with my opponents, because I'm expecting a bunch of Bystials in all those Ryziel Fiendsmith decks. And I mean, Nico Schlickam won the tournament running that super big Bystial version, and Bystials were really popular. So I just felt like, hey, including basically just these two, this one if I do have to go first occasionally, and then this is basically an engine card for Tenpai, of course, and this helps you break through Detonator even more. So I wanted to play a little Bystial package. They were alright, they weren't too bad, definitely did their job. One of Nibiru. That was a bit of a Master Duel Fury, actually, because you are running Fuvalos, and in the Master Duel, there always is that Fury. I mean, now the most Charmies are in Master Duel as well, but it was usually the Max C Fury. So when you're playing Max C, and when your opponent might be committing into Max C, or in that case Fuvalos, you do want to have a card in your deck that is worth drawing into if they do decide to commit. So I just wanted to have the one of Nibiru. I did draw it a couple of times. It's a really good card, but overall, I didn't want to play too many of those interactions on my turn, because a really popular card this weekend also was Triple Tactic Talents. And guess what? I had a lot of opponents just setting talents, showing me after the game I had talents, but it didn't do anything. So yeah, I did play the nip, but the idea definitely was to play as little hand interaction as possible. It definitely also was often the case that I was just holding my Bystials for the end phase, especially Magnamut, because I just didn't want to play into those talents, and it worked out really nicely. And that's it for the monsters. If you ask me, best breaker right now, Forbidden Droplet, helped me play through so many fields. It's really good into the Ryziel matchup. It's really even decent into the Malice deck, even though it's a little harder against that. But I went in on that Droplet a lot. It won me so many games. Classical Lightning Storms. Really good breaker against both the Ryziel deck and the Malice deck. The Malice deck right now usually is not even building that big of a combo field. You even do not necessarily see Cyber's Desert Worm anymore. Therefore, this is not an auto-negate for them. So just destroying 2 to 3 back rows from Malice can be really good. And I definitely wanted to include this card. And now we get to the more creative things, I guess. Double Slayer. absolutely for the Ryziel matchup. I played 5 Ryziels out of 9 rounds, sent the Detonator back into the extra deck like it was nothing non-stop. Want to have access to my breakers even more through double thrust. Book of Eclipse even worked better than the Slayer for me this tournament. Like, it is very, very good against all kind of different decks, but mainly, of course, against the Ryziel decks. Not good against Malice, of course, but we did take a little bit of a high roll approach with this deck, saying, hey, I do want to just have a really good main deck against Ryziel because I felt like it would be more popular. And guess what? We played 0 Malice in the end. And the strategy behind this was we are just going to play a main deck really, really good against Ryziel and then side, basically overside for the Malice matchup in case we do play against it. Then, good old Enemy Controller. We played some old and funny breakers in this. Enemy Controller did win me a couple of games. It is a bit iffy against Detonator because if you target Detonator, you gotta expect them to also just destroy their own Detonator so you don't get the body over. Still, in the end, you cleared the monster. You do not really care about it anymore as you can just proceed with your Tenpai cards and you're just going to OTK with the Tenpai cards regardless. So it did do the trick. I wasn't super satisfied with it though. I think just including an extra Eclipse, maybe even a third Slayer, probably is better than the Eclipse, better than the Enemy Controller. It worked out fine though. Then we have two triple tactic talents. It's all the 2-offs as you can see, but I just wanted to have like a variation of breakers in my hand. I never wanted to draw doubles of these basically, so I went with a lot of 2-offs. I know, looks a bit weird, looks a bit iffy, but I think that worked out quite nicely in the end. And then of course the Tenpai cards, Kaiman, Terraforming, Sengen Summoning. This card very often, because you're drawing a lot of times a hand with basically 5 non-engine cards and then a thrust. So like you play into their field with the non-engine, then they activate a monster effect somehow, you go thrust into Terraforming, and then this card is all you need to just basically end the game on that turn. Feather Duster, another powerful breaker, and then the one-off Imperm, in case we get sent first, it's a good target for the thrust, of course, to be set to the Spell and Trap Zone. As I said, never got to go first game 1, so that never came up, so we just occasionally used it as an interruption, I guess. Trades well into Detonator, so it's definitely not the worst card either. So I was definitely quite satisfied with the main deck. And if I would have to change something, I would consider dropping out the second Fadra because I did side it out a lot. And yes, it did win me a game, but I also lost games because I just started Fadra, which just doesn't do a whole lot on its own. So I would certainly consider it. Then in Nibiru, kind of random as well. So I guess you could consider siding or just throwing that out of the main deck as well. And then as I said, the enemy controllers also weren't amazing, but they did fulfill their purpose. So I'm not mad about them either. So yeah, that was the main deck. 42 cards, of course, the perfect cards, card amount. And let's go over to the extra deck. Fiendsmith cards. We did run these Fiendsmith cards. I guess you could count these to Fiendsmith cards as well. There we are. We have Moon of the Closed Tavern to just bridge whatever you have into the Fiendsmith cards. You can just bridge the Tenpai cards into Fiendsmith, or you can, yeah, pretty much that most of the time. I've summoned Sequence like 2 or 3 times. It definitely does come up. Not that often though, because you are usually just going to go for the trap setup in the graveyard, and when the trap setup is there, you just can't afford to go into Sequence because that just shuffles back all of your light fiends, and then the trap setup is just like not working anymore pretty much. I think Agnum is really, really good. I thought about not running it, but then it did win me multiple games. But you like basically only summon Agnum when you summon Sequence, so it was always when I summon Sequence, I usually also summon Agnum, and that was a really, really worth combination. Then Requiem, I just don't have the space to run a second one. I think right now it's good to run 2 because you are going to get Bystials under the lot. In my deck, that's not really that big of an issue because you are trying to win by turn 4 anyways, and you're not playing that long of a game. So I think running 1 in this is fine. And I think I summoned this maybe once or twice. I literally never summoned this though, so I think you could consider just dropping Caesar. The thing though is, I expected them to send me first, but they just never did. So, like, if they sent me first more, I think I would have summoned this more as well. So it was just because the opponents never sent me first, and that's why I never got to summon Caesar. Might be worth cutting. It was not that bad though. And I guess Chaos Angel kind of belongs to the family as well, because you usually are going to make this with some of the Fiendsmith cards, of course. Then there's Typhon, definitely really good playing into the Fiendsmith Ryziel deck, and I summoned it multiple times. Then there is SP. I don't think I ever summoned this actually, because you want to attack directly, clearly. And then there is Seals, did summon this a couple of times, pretty good. And then the Tenpai cards. It's crazy to me how with such a small Tenpai package in the extra deck, you're still winning the game so often. You're still OTKing on the regular, only having these 3 cards basically in your extra deck. You know, like regular Tenpai, you play the extra deck out of 15 cards, but you only need these 3. You literally only need these 3. I OTK'd so many times just using these. It's crazy. It's actually insane. And the Black Rose Dragon, I also ran because I thought this card might be kind of good into Malice, because it's kind of the same argument that Exciton Knight for the Ryziel deck. You just have a level 4 and a level 3, and then you go into Black Rose Dragon main phase 1 and they can't really do too much about it. Never happened though, as I never played Malice and I never summoned this in the end, and I think this is arguably worth cutting. These 3 put in the work though. I sometimes wish to have another one of these. It worked out just fine though. It worked out absolutely amazing, and I was very, very satisfied with the extra deck overall. And now over to the side deck. We got the 3 Perulias. I told you, I think they are really, really good into Ryziel. I played a lot of Ryziel, so I was happy to have them. Then we overside for Malice, as I told you. There's triple Lancea, joined by double Ghost Spell. I think you can include the Phantasmize into that as well. I sided those in more regular too, though, against other decks as well, because this card is like kind of okay even if they sent you first. I told you they never sent me first, but in theory you always have to consider that while side decking. So this card is all right even if you go first. And then there is the Sanctum to get out the Lancea as well, because you play Thrust and you can just set the win of Sanctum. Together with that, I guess D-Barrier never really mattered too much. I did side this in going second against Ryziel, because you just very reliably break the Ryziel field, and then having this set to just skip their turn again is kind of nice. More so against the pure Ryziel deck, of course, though, because against the Fiendsmith deck, they can still do a whole lot of things. Then I wanted to have some more hand interaction with the double Ash Blossom, because when you're playing so many breakers, you've got to kind of adjust your game plan in Game 2 and Game 3, because they are just going to be aware of your breakers. So you want to make sure that you have something else to rely on, being like the Ash Blossoms, the Ghost Spells, and so on and so forth. And then, last but not least, the Corkimero Drago. In theory, I wanted to go first against Malice post-side, and that was like a main feature of that, because it just stops the Malice deck from playing, hopefully. I also saw myself in the end siding this in against Ryziel post-siding, because just I thought they will send me first eventually. Nobody did, but I thought they would send me first eventually, after realizing I'm just slayering, dropletting, and all that on the regular, but they never sent me first. So I wanted to have that in my deck. Luckily, never drew it going second, but it never came up. I never drew it, I never summoned it. It was there in theory for the Malice matchup mainly. Never came up though. So yeah, 7-2 in the end. Got to defeat Josh in the last round of Swiss, which was kind of funny. It was an interesting match actually, because I outgrinded him game 1 after going second. Then game 2, he sent me first for the first time in the entire tournament. I had to go first. He did manage to win this game, and then we went into game 3 with like 4 minutes left on the timer. And basically, my entire game plan at this point was just, I'm trying to skip his turn as quickly as possible. So I threw in all the Mochamis and all the crazy turn skip cards. And then I just tried to do damage as quickly as possible. So my game plan was not how do I win the game, but it was more so how do I deal damage the quickest. And yeah, I did successfully do so. So we got it in the end. It was a really, really, really fun day of Yu-Gi-Oh! I gotta say. I really enjoyed just hanging around, vibing with everyone, just having a good time. Definitely, I realized again how much fun playing is. Casting is amazing, of course. I love casting and I don't want to give it up for anything. But playing, there's a reason why I'm in love with Yu-Gi-Oh! And I realized again that definitely that was there. And it was even funnier because everyone, just all of my friends were making jokes of me and my Liz, and I still told them, what are you talking about? Look who's sitting here, look who's X2, it is still working. And yeah, it was a really fun experience. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope this wasn't too long. I hope you enjoyed the theory on the funny breakers like Book of Eclipse.
Any shoutouts?
Shoutouts to everyone coming up to me at the regional. Definitely was plenty of people making me sign stuff, saying hello, saying nice words. Thank you so much for that. We will be back, of course, on the Twitch grind, of course, in the next couple of days. And last week, I was out of town, and also I was preparing very hard for this regional. It worked out decently enough, I guess. So shoutouts to everyone coming up there. Shoutouts to Icentrix behind the camera for recording the profile here with me, and also of course for lending me a bunch of cards for this deck, because all the Fiendsmith cards do belong to him, and I was very excited to include those into my deck because I think that was a main reason why I won. I do want to say so though, the Tenpai Striker deck also looked really nice, and I might be getting into that one as well. So who knows? We might be cooking. We will see. We will see. He played Sky Striker Mobilize Engage and got 5th place with it. Julius Schwarzkopf, that is. He played Striker, Tenpai. Holy, who would expect that? But yeah, thank you everyone for watching. It was a fantastic tournament. Also, shoutouts, of course, to Ask the Dog, as I stayed with him from Friday to Saturday and spent the time on his place or at his place. It was really amazing. Thank you so much for watching. Check out all the other channels, the social media stuff and so on in the description. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to like. Make sure to say something nice in the comments. Thank you for watching. Bye. Bye.